أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله القاسم الجبارين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمخلوقين سيدنا ونبينا وشفينا أبو القاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائي وتسليما لأمري. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. It seems only like yesterday when we finished the last Muharram. So time seems to fly. This is also said to be one of the signs of the end of times, that there will be no value in time. Time will fly. Allah knows best. So, just to recount that we have had two series of lectures. In one, we covered the historical situation and analyzed all the forces which led to the massacre of Karbala. So, before Karbala, if you like. And last year, we covered what happened after Karbala to the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. So, in one sort of structure, we have covered what happened, what led to the Karbala, understanding why it happened, and then what were the consequences of this. However, we have in this previous series mostly concentrated only actually on the Ithna Ashari Shi'is, which at the moment constitutes the majority, but in many times in the past they did not constitute the majority of the Shi'is. So let us, these 4 sessions which we have, we want to look at the development, contribution and composition of the followers of Imam Ali who are not Ithna Asharis. And we will see that there are many and varied contributions from them, and their history is also rich. And as it happens, we see that in today's politics, we find references, for example, to the Saudi attack on Yemen, that they are attacking the Yemenis who are Shias, or because of their Shia sympathies, or they are backed by Iran because they are Shias, the Yemenis. So we need to understand what is the nature of these people. Or we find references in Syria that the government of Bashar al-Assad is supported by Iran because they are Shias, or because they are sympathetic to Shias, or whatever. And recently, we also find references in Turkey that the Alawi minority are Shias. So we have quite a number of references recently, and we have very little clue as to who they are and where they come from and what is their history and what made them to be what they are. The second point to note here is that this Daesh, actually its main objective is not attacking the West or anything else. Its main objective is to attack the Shias and eliminate them. That is its main objective. It doesn't have any other objective. So we need to understand where this hatred comes from as well, and what is their logic in trying to attack the Shias in Iraq or Syria or Lebanon or wherever they may be. So let us start first with the definition of the term Shia. Those of you who know Arabic will know that the word Shia only means party. So when we say, we cannot actually use Shia as a unconnected thing. Yeah, we should say Shia of Ali or Shia of so and so and so and so, party of Ali and so on. Of course, it has come to be now common parlance that we just say Shia, which means actually we mean Shia of Ali. So when we refer to Shias, we are actually referring to the followers of Imam Ali. And we saw in the last series that this was obviously the main focus of events in the first few years of Islam after the Prophet. On the one hand, there is a clear case, and we also see from the narrations present in all books of all sort of sects, that the merits of Imam Ali alayhi salam are unparalleled and therefore cannot be dismissed by anybody. And the only way this could be done, and this was something which was figured out by the Banu Umayyah, that the only way we could sort of make people forget the status of Imam Ali alayhi salam is to discredit him in some way or another and eliminate his followers. Otherwise, the remembrance of what the Prophet said about him is just going to be trouble and problematic all the time. And we saw in the recent case, which I narrated last time because it was fresh then, that one of the first actions of these Daesh people in Syria was to dig up and desecrate the grave of the companion of the Prophet and Imam Ali, Hujr bin Adi. We saw that Hujr bin Adi and his 3 or 4 colleagues refused, and this is after the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they refused to curse Imam Ali in public. For that refusal, they were arrested and taken to Damascus, where they were executed for their non-obedience to the Caliph. So it was clearly supporters of Imam Ali executed by the Umayyad Caliph. And this action of Daesh demonstrates that that is the line they are still following. So it's a very live line, if you like, the line of Muawiyah, or the line of anti-Imam Ali. And by extension, followers of Imam Ali, which is the Shias. That is why the Daesh comes from there. The other point which I have brought before, and which we also need to put as a preliminary today, is that, and this will link to Sister Amina's session day before yesterday on redemptive suffering, that one of the very difficult things to understand up to recently for us was the kind of fear and terror which can be put into people so that they cannot express themselves. They have to disguise their true beliefs. So, for example, generally, whenever some other people want to sort of, discredit the Shia, they say that the Shia, they believe and they practice taqiyya, or not reveal their true beliefs. The question is, when would you do that? When you feel that revealing your true beliefs will put you in danger. So, for example, about 5 years ago, I met an Irish professor. And she said to me, you have to learn a lot from us. I said, what do you mean? She said, for 30 years, we never, in public, expressed what we actually believed about the Irish situation. Because we did not know who is an informer and who is a friend. And where will this information go and where will it land us? So we were in a state of complete terror. And we learned how to live with it. And you will have to learn the same, she said to me 5 years ago. As things have moved on, we see today now with the kind of statements and the kind of powers being given to teachers and doctors and nurses and God knows to spot somebody becoming radical. And this definition can go from, say, this young man suddenly started to say Bismillah before eating his food. He never used to say. So he's become radicalized. Or, all kinds of things which people who are not familiar with what is the situation, they come up with. So the only thing which will happen is exactly what the Irish professor said. We will say, my name is Mo, it's not Muhammad, and I do this and that and whatever. And at home, I do what I believe in. And that is called taqiyya, right? But in that situation there, in the early days of Islam, we see that the attempt was to just wipe out the memory of the Ahlul Bayt, because you could not wipe out the sayings of the Prophet about Imam Ali alayhi salam or Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, or the Ahlul Bayt and so on. And we see one incident specifically in Damascus. I do not know how authentic this is, but we hear this in especially after the Ashura Majlis, that when the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who were taken captive, were paraded in the streets of Damascus, nobody recognized them. Nobody understood that this is the family of the Prophet. So one could see that already that campaign to eliminate their memory was taking root, that in parts of the Muslim world, the family of the Prophet could not be recognized, even when they were paraded as very desperate captives. So in this situation, it is quite clear, and just one more thing, we also saw that for many years after, the order was to curse Imam Ali from the mimbar in most mosques in the Muslim world, just to make sure that people think this is a bad person, full stop. So nobody comes and questions what happened to them and their family and Karbala and so on, so that it goes out of history. All right, so that is just setting the scene. So, and the next point to remember is that although today we more or less identify, if you like, Ithna Ashari Shi'ism with Iran. So when we think of Ithna Ashari Shi'is, we think of Iran. This is a very recent phenomenon. Iran has been a Shi'i country only for 500 years. So we have 1400 plus years of Muslim history. So for over nearly 1,000 years, Iran was a Sunni country. So its presence in the early history of Shi'ism is limited. It's different from what we would think now. It was quite different. So Shi'ism, as we saw before, and just to repeat slowly, also developed really in the environment of Kufa and Najaf in Iraq, where, of course, Imam Ali alayhi salam had moved for his Khilafat. And this was a small band of Shias who slowly expanded, but not much. And that was the extent, if you like, of the proper Shia, or the followers or the party of Imam Ali. The rest were obviously joining as required. Then, what happened for that 1,000 years before Iran became Shi'i? We find a number of developments that there grew up a large variety of the followers of Imam Ali, or the party of Imam Ali, if you like, in different parts of the Muslim world. And I already referred to the Alawis in Turkey, or the Alawites in Syria, the Druze in Syria to some extent, the Nusayris in Syria and Pakistan, the Zaydis in Yemen, and then another big group who are known as the Fatimis, who were in Egypt and North Africa mainly at that time, and today will be represented by the Ismaili, Aga Khanis, and the Bohras, and a number of other smaller branches. So it is these people who actually kept and developed the message of Imam Ali alayhi salam during that time, during all the different persecutions, all the different problems which arose in the community after Karbala. And our intention over the next 3 sessions is really to look at each one of them in detail and examine how they started, where they came from, what happened to them, what are their current status, what are their beliefs, what are their practices, and so on, and how they relate to the general body of the Shia as well. Although we won't go into detail into any one of them today, because we want to just explore the background here. One of the things which happens and explains to you the situation is the origin of the tradition of majalis. There may be other explanations. My own understanding is that in a reign in which you cannot speak anything freely, and there is this security apparatus all over the place trying to eliminate the history which you have, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam seems to have come up with a very ingenious solution. Because clearly, the true story of Karbala would not come out from the Umayyads, right? They could not say, we went and we killed the grandson of the Prophet. This would be disaster for them. They could say this happened and that happened, and these people were creating fitna and all kinds of things. And so it seems that in Damascus, in the prison, they started this tradition of recounting the musibah which befell their family in terms of grieving, mourning, which nobody could stop. And that recounting process sort of spread like a ripple effect across the Muslim world. And now, of course, you can see it's gone global. And when it has spread, of course, that has preserved the true story of Karbala all over the place. And it is one way of breaking that barrier of, suppression and oppression, but still getting your message through. I mean, you have lots of people, different prisons and so on, who smuggle letters out, who do all kinds of things to see that their message is available. And so this tradition starts from there. And on the way, as it has developed, it has also taken local forms. So you have it's very different in Iran, very different in Pakistan, very different in Lebanon, sometimes only recounting, sometimes with what we call matam, and sometimes with zanjir, and sometimes with swords, and all kinds of variations on the whole thing, depending on how and which culture it has gone into. The other impact of repression and people effectively going underground is also the development of semi-mystical ideas. Because you are really upset, depressed. So you try to rationalize what happened, why we are in this situation. If we are right, why we are in this situation. And this also gives rise to all kinds of other, additions, if you like. And tomorrow we'll see some of them, how they have felt, how they have been incorporated into some of the beliefs of some of these people. One of the central piece there, which is common to a larger or lesser extent, is the, if you like, power of Imam Ali alayhi salam, right? So even in the time of the Prophet, we have Imam Ali known as for his bravery, valor, prayer, and so on, right? The Sheikh, for example, yesterday referred to this Quranic ayah which refers to Imam Ali advancing his finger in prayer when a beggar came. We have the triumphs in the Battle of Kandak and so on. And in fact, Allama Iqbal also captures that in two couplets, just to give you a flavor. So one in Farsi, he says, and Amir Jan, forgive me if my Farsi is not accurate, Kasira muyassar nashud in sa'adat, Kasira muyassar nashud in sa'adat, Bekabe viladat be masjid shahadat. Nobody was blessed with this blessing of birth in the Kaaba and martyrdom in the mosque. unique feature of Imam Ali alayhi salam. In Urdu, Allama Iqbal says, इस्लाम के दामन में बस दो ही तो चीज़ है, एक है ज़र्ब यदुल्लाही, दूसरा सजदे शब्बीरी. So in the body of Islam, there are only two things. One is the stroke of Imam Ali's sword, and the other one is Imam Hussein's sajda in Ashura. So you can see the status. Now, you can expand this and put onto it near divine powers. So very much like what has happened in Christianity to Isa alayhi salam, that because he was curing the blind or the leper or this or that, and he was born without a father and so on, they elevate him to the status of just under God, or son of God, or even those who don't accept son of God, they believe he had a lot of divine power. And similarly, some of these people who went underground, they also elevated Imam Ali to semi-divinity. And this is where you have a very fine line between proper practice and then going above and attributing actually the actions to Imam Ali alayhi salam. Yeah. And that's why you see the names like Alawis or Nusayris or so on. But we will see that tomorrow. But just to say that this is a practice which sometimes comes from that kind of situation where you are desperate and you are under. The second thing which happens whenever troubles become too much. Now you remember after Karbala, all the Shias are under stress, persecuted. Some of them who revolted have all been eliminated, and now the Umayyads have complete control. Right? You cannot, as the case of Hujr bin Adi shows, you can't even refuse to, swear at your own imam. And you get desperate. So you try to look at those ideas which talk about the end of time. But you think now, this is enough hardship. This is really the end of time. This is in theological discourse. We refer to this as messianism, right? Expectation of a savior, which is present in many, many cultures and traditions. So, to give you an example, in the Christian tradition, there is this notion of Armageddon, which supposedly, if I understand it correctly, says that once Palestine has been completely occupied by the Jews, there will be a rupture, and Isa alayhi salam will come and kill all of them and bring the end of time and rule of Christianity over the earth. This is the theory. From theory, you can go to dangerous practice. So, you see, for example, when Marx, he said that ultimately the workers will take over, full stop. This is my theory, and this is how I explain it. There is no stopping it. He said this is a actually destined destiny of man, that workers will take over and communism will become the norm. Okay, that's theory, fine. If it happens, fine. Doesn't happen, fine. Lenin was his disciple, He said, fine, if the master says that this is going to happen, what can we do to make it happen sooner? Yeah? How can we speed it up? So he came up with this idea of revolutionary takeover to speed up what was going to happen anyway. So here in Christianity, there is a group or a tradition of what are called Christian Zionists. They also think that if that is going to happen in Palestine, let's make Jews take over as soon as possible so that Isa alayhi salam comes back faster. And that accounts for their support for all kinds of atrocities which the Israelis are committing. They're saying this is going to speed it up. So you see, this kind of theories can also lead to action which may not be correct. Or we have, of course, in Muslim tradition, this idea of the Mahdi coming towards the end of time. And it is predicated by all kinds of narrations and reports, some true, some of, disputable veracity, that when the earth is filled with injustice, the Savior will come, and there are some signs this will happen here and this will happen here, and then deliver the Muslims into a just society. Okay? So, many times in Muslim history, this kind of things have happened. In the Sudan, for example, we have had two leaders claiming to be Mahdis. Muhammad Ahmad Mahdi and another one. And one of them actually fought the British and defeated them. So, one of my Sudanese friends always tells me that, look, you are just always waiting for the Mahdi to come, right? We have had two and nothing has been solved. So get on with life and see what happens. Don't just wait for that. On the other hand, in 1979, I think, or 1980, early 1980, just after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, a man called Juhayman bin Uthman, a Saudi person, on a Friday Jummah prayer, took over the Haram in Mecca with his followers. And it took the Saudis 2 months to clear the Haram from his followers because they had stockpiled arms and they have done all kinds of preparations for taking this over. But his khutbah, which he delivered after taking over, is very interesting. And he said, the earth has been filled with injustice, our rulers are corrupt, etc., etc., etc. So I am the Mahdi sent by God to deliver the Muslim people to justice. So the idea of messianism is present there. And in this, the relevance of this is that in that period when the followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam were persecuted, lot of them resorted to messianism. So they said, actually, this person is not killed, but he has gone into Gaiba. This person is still alive and is still guiding us, and so on. So they resorted to all kinds of stratagems to keep their focus on. And we will see that tomorrow. But this is not an isolated case here. This is a function of the kind of surroundings you will have. The next thing to understand as a background is that in terms of the practice of Islam, we have people who have various temperaments, I would say. So we have people who really are not interested in anything other than straightforward prayer and fasting and whatever. And there are other people who are much more mystically inclined, and there are other people who are very mystically inclined. So we have a established tradition of mysticism, and we have really, the generic term for this kind of temperament is Sufis. We have lots of Sufi groups across the world. One of the things which is common to 99% of the Sufi groups is that their kutub, their pillar, if you like, or their reference point is Imam Ali alayhi salam. So again, these are people who are quite legitimately looked upon as followers of Imam Ali, because although they have they could be Sunnis, they could be Shi'is, they could be all kinds of things, but they have that common lineage of transmission chain, if you like, of their knowledge, which ends in Imam Ali. Only one tariqah, which is started in Turkey and is in some other places as well, the Naqshbandiya, they trace their origin from the first Caliph, Abu Bakr. All the others are from Imam Ali. And Sufism can survive in all kinds of contexts. Our brother from Iraq will know that even somebody like Izzat Dori is supposed to be a Sufi. Yeah. And it can be underground, it can be open, it can have various forms, and it has a range of practice. You have Sufis who are very strict in their prayers and fasting and so on, and you have Sufis who believe that because they have got direct link with God, they don't need to pray and fast. They're doing their thing anyway. So you have that range, but across the range, they will be followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam, or somehow linked to his. And so they will have his, if you like, reverence in their theology and in their hearts. Okay. Now to go down, some of the practices which we have seen historically in Islam. One of them is, I think philosophers and theologians and historians, they call it anthropomorphism, right? Which is, I think a very long-winded word for saying that they believe in the physical body of Allah. So, for example, when you read that Allah is sitting on his throne, they actually believe that somebody is sitting on the throne. So it's like assigning human attributes to Allah, right? I don't think they think it is like a direct one-to-one, but it's like an understanding that that is possible. The other one, which has been debated across, is this question of the difference, the balance, if you like, between free will and predeterminism. Whether everything you do is done by Allah, so then where is the accountability? Or you have some freedom, then why does Allah allow you to do something which is not good? This question has plagued, but where you put yourself on it is also critical in terms of thinking. And two schools of thinking developed in the Muslim countries on this, and then others developed from there. One which believes in this kind of things is we call Asharism, and the other one which believes more in the basis of reasoning is called Mu'tazila. And then, of course, the Shia and so on have also an addition or developed the Mu'tazili philosophy further. For example, one of the things which all the Shia philosophers have developed is that, and this is very interesting in the light of what Amina said, is that if somebody loves their imams, can that somebody go permanently into hell? And I think the universal answer is no. They could go into temporary punishment, but eventually they will end up in heaven because they loved the imam. So this is a refinement of pure rational thinking. Rational thinking says you did something bad, you knew it was bad, that's it, end of story. You can't be brought back. And so on. So a mixture of these kind of beliefs also have crept into some of the groups, right? And why I am telling you this is that tomorrow when we want to start looking at the groups, you will see how some of them have taken some bits, some have taken others, some have taken Imam Ali to very big, to very high places, which is probably not correct. Some have left him as pure human and so on. And some have gone into mysticism like the Sufis and so on. But between this whole collection, they have been instrumental in preserving the memory and the legacy of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Before, of course, the Safavids came and lots of other things happened. In between, we can see that even those who wanted power used the love or their professed love for the Ahlul Bayt as their excuse. So typically, the Abbasids, when they wanted to confront the Umayyads, they said, we are fighting for the rights of the Ahlul Bayt. And when they came to power, they turned against the followers of Ahlul Bayt and probably were more repressive than many other people. Okay, the last thing, and this is a little bit controversial, but I think it is important to understand because that will give us the background to the history, is that in early spread of Islam, you had, of course, a lot of people accepting Islam. And sooner rather than later, a lot of non-Arabs started to accept Islam. So some Persians, some all kinds of people. And typically they were referred to as the Mawali, right? Or they were attached to some Arab tribal chief or so on, especially in Kufa and Najaf and parts of Iraq. Now, the kind of nepotism and family fiefdom which the Umayyads had established could not see these people as 100% Muslims. They were not worried about their beliefs. They were saying that they should not have as much right to the wealth or from the Baitul Mal. They would have to pay some taxes for protection and so on. So there was a discrimination, if you like, even between people who had accepted Islam. And this caused a lot of resentment amongst the Mawali. And whenever there was an uprising, many of them joined. Now, they were sympathetic to Imam Ali alayhi salam as well because he was perceived to be the one who would not discriminate on this basis. So this is another reason, if you like, for some of the people coming into that. In fact, amongst the Umayyads, this became a very big problem and in fact probably gave the Abbasids a chance to take over. Probably this single thing that they alienated large parts of their populations. It was only in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz that he He said, look, this is the root cause of our problem, and we need to get rid of it. But it was too late by then. The Abbasids had already begun to encroach on them. Okay, so the idea of today was to set this scene, inshallah, give you an idea that the followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam and Ahlul Bayt come in various shapes and sizes and forms, and the different drivers which put them there. And tomorrow, inshallah, we want to start looking at some of the specific groups. So hopefully tomorrow we'll look at the Alawis and the Alawites and so on. On Wednesday, we want to look at the Zaydis and in Yemen and so on. And then Thursday, I'm not here. Sister Amina will be here. But Friday, we want to look at the Fatimis, because they have, just to give you a flavor of the Fatimis, they were the people, first of all, the name Fatimi. So obviously, it's from Fatima. This is also distinguishing it from other people who were descended from Imam Ali but not from Fatima. So Zaid, for example, Muhammad al-Hanafiya and so on. These were not Fatima's children. These were Imam Ali's children by other wives. Here we are saying the only line which is valid is the Fatimi line. So it's quite important. And they were the people who both established the city of Cairo, whose name is Kahira, victorious. Kahiratul, I'll give you the name. And established Al-Azhar University. So we can just from that understand the kind of structure they had. And they were very early on, much before the Safavids and anybody in that space. Okay, so that sums up what we want to do today, inshallah. Give you a brief idea of how these desperate and different groups constituted a huge network of people who preserved the heritage of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And then as we put flesh on some of these groups, you will see how they have developed, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.